Can you hear me, Eve? Are you able to hear me? I don't know if you're able to hear me or not, but if you are, raise your hand.
Hello?
There you go. I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Phone. And it said the meeting ID didn't exist that I had from your meeting notice.
Yet another indignity. I was just at a birthday Zoom call for a friend, and there were 3 or 4 tries and phone calls and on and on. So thank you for your patience. I thank you for the reminder too. I was actually starting to watch Homeland, just like I didn't have this commitment. So you rescued me from failure to launch.
Okay, are John and Rose joining us, or is it just the two of us?
So far, I haven't seen them join. I haven't heard any indication that they were or were not, other than Rose sent me a question about how she'd misplaced the email, she said, for how to log in or connect to how to join the thing. And so I resent that to her.
Well,
But
that didn't work. You popped up on my computer. And then normally I prefer to use my headset to having, you know, the
Yeah.
just computer, because that way if there's noise in the background or whatever, and it wouldn't let me in that way.
So there's a couple of things here. Zoom has had I don't know if you've noticed, but Zoom has had a huge raft of security complaints about their practices. You may have missed it, but they went from 10 to 100 million users with the pandemic.
Oh yeah, no, I've had so many Zoom calls the last couple of weeks. It's been
right.
ludicrous.
So they've revised, if you will, their default settings. So here's somebody else calling in now.
I just saw the phone screen pop up.
Yeah, so there's a phone number coming in here, and that may be, we'll find out in a moment or two once they're connected who that is. But
it's me.
It's Rose. All right, good to
Hi,
hear
Rose.
you.
Hi.
So we were just talking about that. First of all, I apologize. I did not start the meeting 5 minutes before, which I usually do when I have one of these Zoom calls. But the Zoom security defaults have been set, so I have to go in and manually unclick a thing called Enable Waiting Room. When I have the waiting room enabled, it means that you all have to wait there until I see you and then admit you. If I don't enable it, then you at least get to go ahead to the next stage where I have the choice to either allow yourselves to rename yourselves, I can mute or allow you to unmute yourselves. But so they've made a number of adjustments here, and some of them, I'm not very skilled at using these advanced techniques, but some of them make the management of the meeting a little trickier. But
yeah, I've managed one. I've been a participant in numerous calls, but I've never initiated.
Got it. Okay. Well, so this is an account I typically use for my Engineers Without Borders team. We've been using it for a couple of years now. Every 2 weeks we do it, and it's a paid account because we often run longer than 40 minutes. It also has the benefit, maybe you guys could tell me, but when you tried to get in, did it say, oh, by the way, you're going to be recorded? Did you know that? And are you willing to come into the meeting knowing you're going to be recorded?
Oh, I see that now. I see it's popped up.
I did not see it.
Yeah, so probably when you just call in like you did, Rose, maybe it doesn't show because you've got a restricted user interface, but just the phone. I don't know what you...
When I tried to come in with the video link, I couldn't get in.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, Rose,
yeah, it redirected me.
Couldn't get in.
What?
I tried to call on the phone and couldn't get in. So,
Well, neither one of you would have gotten very far since the host hadn't started the meeting. So you'd be waiting in
Oh,
limbo. For those of you who are like me of a childhood Catholic background, you may have a perspective on limbo or not. But my recollection, it was where little babies who had done no harm on their own were, had passed and were stuck there until they got to go forward. I don't know, complicated up to fifth graders sort of sense of Catholic theology. So don't go to the bank on that being a factual report on what limbo was.
so
But so far, we're just
and
waiting for
play
John.
Caribbean with a stick,
What's that?
the limbo stick in the
Oh,
Caribbean.
that's a whole different connotation. That evokes Caribbean reggae or something, maybe it was a different, it wasn't even that, it was something else. When you do the limbo, I can't remember. Well, I could see if I could nudge John and see if he's going to join us. I hadn't seen anything from anybody on it. I've been running kind of fast here lately and not keeping up on every little thing. So,
Yeah, I've been amazed at how busy I've been with everybody having projects to work on during.
no kidding. Yeah, that's for sure. Let me see whether, I don't know if I have a number for John or not. I might have gotten one along the way when we were trying to orchestrate one of these things. Yeah, I'll just message him and see if he's.
Maybe we should do an exchange of phone numbers here afterwards in case we need to contact.
That's a thought. So bear with me. I'm just letting him know that the Zoom critique is open. Is he going to join us?
What is yours again? I know I dialed it, but I'll put it in my contacts.
Yeah, the cell is 925 960
960
5286.
5286. And mine, for your reference, is 925 699 4739.
So rather than copy that down, I'm just going to look in recent, and I'll throw it in. But thank you for letting me know. I'm just letting him know
okay.
that Zoom is launched. Hope you can join us, but we'll see. And then we can.
Okay, and my phone number is 925-443-2107, and that's my home phone number.
And the one you're dialing in from is different.
And the cell phone is 925-337-6288.
Yeah. So,
And that's the one that I can receive messages on.
yeah, that's great.
And Rose, the second one?
What?
What was your cell, Rose?
925-337-6288 is my cell phone.
Okay.
Well, we can give it a few more minutes and check in and see how everyone is doing in this time of pandemic. And I hope you're staying safe and well and socially distancing and all that stuff.
Well, I'm going to do my bi-weekly grocery run tomorrow, so that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that does sound exciting.
Getting into Costco is an adventure.
Yeah, I didn't. I can't remember if I shared it to Facebook or if I just shared it to my kids, but I did do I was out there about 7:15 for a morning run, and it was interesting to me, the Livermore, you go to the Livermore one out here?
Yeah, that's where I go.
Yeah, so I got there, parked, was standing at the entrance, and the line went from there down the block towards the tire store and back towards the entrance. And then if you look the other way, very soon it was all the way down the other corner of the building to the far end of the parking lot. And then, but they were very orderly. People were maintaining safe social distancing. They had good staff patrols, if you will, advising people and making sure people understood what to do. And then at the appointed hour, pretty soon the roll-up door came about halfway and they were ducking under and so forth. But then another person came out and started giving directions to the crew that was outside, the customers that were outside. And then they started letting people into the store, and they metered them in with a counter, a clicker, counting them in, and keeping an eye on that. And Some people did not have on face masks. By then, we had the guidance that you should have on a face mask if you're going to those kind of outings. And then it was really, I was there for toilet paper. And so there was no nonsense. I just went down to the main aisle and back to the toilet paper aisle. And they had a very business-like arrangement. There was somebody at that island where they have toilet paper and paper towels, and they put one thing in your cart and just moved you on. If you wanted towels, you didn't get to say, oh, I'll have 3. No,
Yeah.
it was, there's one going in your cart, move on. And likewise at the paper towels. And then I just went and checked out. I thought I got something else. I can't remember what it was, down in the pharmacy aisle. Some Cystane for my post LASIK eyes. And then I was out of there. So it was, and I commended them because they were all very courteous, very polite, very firm about social distancing. And so I thought they did a very good job.
Did you have to wait to get in the door?
About 20 minutes, but they aren't supposed to be open that early.
Well, they have the senior hours.
Yeah, I don't know whether that day was a senior hour or not, but the day before we'd been there, and actually it's noteworthy that they ran out of toilet paper, they said, when we were there, which was mid-afternoon, like 2 to 3 o'clock. And Kathy was making the rest of the run, and I went over there to ask, and they said, oh, we just ran out. And they said, but, you know, we get a shipment every day, so if you're back early tomorrow, you be sure to get some. But you could have been able to get it up through the morning hours until probably mid-afternoon. Wasn't like they were out immediately. And so, and others have told me they've gone out off hours and been able to manage their way through the store. I don't know if they were trying to get toilet paper or not, but at any rate, that was my experience. So I'm just
I don't
gonna,
know what hours are, because we've gone by, and I think the last time we went, we looked at senior hours twice and then came back after it and still had to wait 40 minutes to get in.
yeah.
Yeah, well, since
How are you
I'm,
doing,
quote,
Elizabeth?
elderly and I'm supposed to be sheltering at home, I have a friend who offered to shop for me, and we decided to take him up on it. So
Well, that's good for you. I think that's good advice,
I-
Rose,
I
because
gi-
we're all either old
I
or
give
have
him-
some underlying condition that makes us at risk. So that's good if you can
well,
do that.
my husband is a diabetic, and
Yeah, you don't
so
need
that
the
puts him
hassle.
more at risk.
Yeah,
And
all of the above.
but anyway, so I quote have a personal shopper, and then I order from Amazon, and I have a farm fresh to you box that's delivered every Saturday morning.
Well, that's a good way to handle it. Yeah. I talked with
And,
a woman who's she's the administrator for our Rotary district, and that's important to us as a club because we bank a bunch of our donations there because they're a 501c3. So people can donate to our mini grants, for example, program, and do it through the foundation, and then later on when it's time, so it's a 501c3 tax exempt to the extent allowable by the law donation, and then when we are ready to award our mini grants, we do a formal request. There's a procedure to get your funds out, and we do that, and then they cut the checks, and then they get them to us. Usually, you know, in plenty of time. They usually well exceed their published rules for how long in advance you should ask for this. But this time, the pandemic hit, and so their office in San Jose is closed. This administrator is working from home. The 2 people who would normally sign the checks are working from, you know, they're social distancing, staying at home, and so forth. So our chairman of the mini grants committee has been pinging me about, well, what's the story on these checks tonight? I gave her one a few weeks ago that because we canceled the meeting where these people would have gotten their checks in person at the Rotary Club meeting and so forth. Instead, we said, you know, we'll get them to them in the mail, but the checks still aren't here. So everybody's trying to, and this woman told me, she said her husband is very protective of her and she has not left the house except to walk their dog before probably like the 16th or so of March. We do go out, we exercise, we walk in the park, we've gone to the supermarkets, we go gas our car, and do those kinds of things. But we are sensitive to the guidance, and we've now got the new guidance to wear masks when we go out to places where you encounter people. And so John was just got back to me. I'm unable to Zoom in tonight, have a good discussion, sorry. So I'll just let him know that we've noted that, and we'll miss him. So with that, I suggest we go ahead. Bear with me just for a moment here. And is there anything else in terms of check-in? I just want to stress that it's a different. None of us have experienced anything like this in our lives. It's different. It's existentially different, I think.
Yeah, it's very, very different. As I said, I think it's a great time to have writing projects. I'm working on, I've got I guess she's first author and she's got a publisher for it. And she was pushing back the deadline, and we've been working fast and furious. We've almost got a whole book manuscript put together.
Oh, great. Great. That's super. Yeah.
It's different. She's a Venezuelan of Italian origin living in Kuwait. So,
oh, goodness gracious, what a pedigree.
Prose is a challenge.
Yeah, that's pretty lively. Well, let me. I'm gonna go ahead and find my Word documents. Let's see if I may have shut down this. And yeah, I've shut down, so I have to go find them. Bear with me for a minute.
Hi, Rose.
I have my phone now. I made it in.
Oh, terrific. So bear with me.
So evidently, I was just too quick before you got everything set up.
Alrighty, so I see. I'm just looking. I have to open these documents here, so bear with me for a moment.
Okay. Hi, Eve.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. My granddaughter really likes your story, but as I said, I asked her again when we did a long FaceTime on Easter, and because her mom kept saying, well, have you sent the comments? And of course, lots of 8-year-olds know she hadn't, but she keeps coming back to well, how does she snatch their identities when all she has is mortal powers?
I am thinking about that because it's a very good question.
Oh, this is great to get user feedback from a youngster who's that age bracket.
I volunteered her as somebody who loves that kind of story and hadn't seen any of the rest of it. So she really was exactly the type of reader Rose needed.
Right. Well,
That's
this evil Viliana or Violetta, as she's known as in this book, is a very determined person. And I may have to just insert a comment that, that lets us know that Mary Elise has no idea how she managed to do it, but she is doing
it. It's a magical kingdom, so you got a fair amount of latitude there.
It's a magical kingdom. Yeah, well, she has pieces of mortal magic. Once she gets into the fairy tale dimension, then she starts collecting more magic.
Well, you might ask your granddaughters how they think that she should do it.
Well,
yeah, I've got one granddaughter who's a real fan, but that was, I looked at that and I thought, how did she do that? Well, she did it.
Well, I often think about this when you're doing these fantasy tales or somebody else is doing sort of a sci-fi thing, or you watch a show about that. We watched a Danish film the other night by Varian. And it's basically, in a nutshell, a couple wanders in looking to buy a house into this development, and then they're trapped there, and then it's like they can never get out, and they never do get out, and it's a terrible story. But it's a world-building exercise. You have to suspend belief to go into to have any of this make any sense. And so I always admire that. Whereas if you're trying to write, either historical fiction or memoir or travel or autobiographically based fiction, you're often grounded in contemporary. You're grounded in a story that's set in the normal workaday world, and so then you're worried about set and setting, scene, and background and all that sort of stuff. But if you go into these other realms, you got to build all that, right? You got to make sure that what Mary Elise as a fairy's world is like, with sparkly glitter and being little or small or big or under, you got to make all that work. And so it's quite different. So, yeah, well, with that,
like you have to come up with the rules for your kingdom, and then you have to be consistent and follow it, kind of a thing. And
if you're open to it, I don't know if it's helpful how you guys want to do this, but I've got Rose's documents. They're just open first. And so if you want, I can share my comments on that, or I can just read them to you. It doesn't matter, whatever way you want to do it. If we were at the critique table, I just read them and we talk about it.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
It's fine
Well,
with me.
so this, have you guys been fooling around with screen sharing? Let's see if I know how to do this. Let's see. This may not be your document. No, that's not it. Let's see, find the right one. This is one of them. So this will either be 17 or 18. Okay, so I managed to get 17 up. All right. So
Okay.
can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so you can see I wrote, in terms of your specifics, is the sequence of the logic okay? I found it logical. Is there anything confusing? Not to me. I like this piece. I only marked a place I liked. I didn't have any suggestions, so you didn't get any yield out of me, Rose. Sorry. So I just was not very helpful there. And then let's see, the other one was your number 18. Let's see. Bear with me for a minute. I have too many Word docs open. I didn't think I did, but I do. Let's see. Well, this is 18. Let's see what 18 looks like. I continue. Can you see it again? Both of you can see it?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I continue to like this. I marked a passage I quite liked in places with suggestions about splitting long sentences. Oh, that's Eve's. I'm sorry, I jumped to Eve's instead. Well, I've done one of Eve's, one of yours, and one of Eve's. How about if I do Eve's since I have it up here? And
I'm seeing my document up.
Okay, well, let me stop sharing and see what I can try and do again here. There's Eve's.
Yeah, both Eve and I had 17 and 18, chapters 17 and 18. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's a coincidence. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, so when I try this again, even though I think I'm looking at yours, instead what shows up on the screen is Eve's right now. Are you seeing Eve's document?
I'm seeing mine.
Well, that's interesting. I'll stop the share.
I'm seeing Mary Elise and the fairy.
Well, that's curious as can be. Now I've stopped sharing it. So you're still seeing something up there, shared screen?
Yeah, just you.
Just you.
Just me. Okay, so well, that's.
You can go ahead and just share it.
I'll give it another try here.
Okay.
This is weird. It keeps coming up with Eve's document for me, but you're seeing something else. So
we're seeing Mary Elise and the Snatched Fairy.
Chapter 17 or 18, or which one is that?
Chapter 18.
Okay, well then that's easy. I'll just go ahead and if you can see chapter 18, I'll just run over here and take a quick look and I'll tell you what I said about 18, which is basically again, is the ending satisfying? I liked it. Is the title seem appropriate? Seems okay to me. I marked a place I liked. I didn't have suggestions. So this stuff to me, I guess what I'm saying, Rose, is I don't have very much to add here. It seems like the writing's clean. I didn't find things that I would suggest gave me pause that you ought to try and attend to. So that's basically all I've got to say about those. So
yeah, I was checking about the ending because I'd had a comment from someone about the ending to them seemed ambiguous. I thought, you don't understand. I have to leave the possibility to be a next book, and so I've got to leave this villain.
Yeah, right. You got to keep thinking about.
I've got
You're on a roll.
I got myself into trouble after book 2 because I took away all her magic, and then I had to give her away to get it back.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so that's what I was doing with the end of this, is leaving it open. We don't know what she chooses.
Well, I commend you for bringing these products, getting these writing products ready to go and getting them published, getting your family involved in preparing the cover art and stuff. I think that's very cool. It's got to be satisfying for you.
It is. It is.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So that's very nice.
So,
so Eve, I guess, do you have comments for Rose on her pieces?
Comments, and I'm trying to find the second chapter, do I have both chapters? I must have them in 2 files. But I guess my granddaughter's other thing that she loved was she loved that when they came through and got frozen,
Ah,
came through in time. So that particular aspect, I don't, and it's very different than what the movie Frozen means, but she thought that was really cool. So, you might want to try that one again or expand on that. That may be a popular thing with that age group.
so
Yeah,
how old is
that has shown up. That's shown up earlier in the book in some of the chapters that you haven't read.
so how old is your granddaughter, Eve?
She's about 8.5 now.
8.5. Okay. Well, that just gives me an
And
idea of what they're like.
she reads voraciously. So,
Oh, wonderful.
I'll send you book 1 and book 2, and she can read
okay.
it.
These
now.
are not expensive to buy on Amazon. They're not expensive, so she could have her own copies, right? Support a starving artist. I don't mean to suggest you're starving. We're so fortunate that we're not. There are a lot of people who are really suffering during this time.
I know.
you
I
know.
know.
The other things, I guess it was me, and I haven't gone all the way back, was the use of Bernice, because as I said, I never associate the name Bernice with Snow White's wicked stepmother.
I invented Bernice as a name.
Ah, okay.
When Liliana convinced her to trade her all of her magic objects and whatever, and gave her this 5-flavored tea of forgetfulness, then she, I had to have a name for her because she's now this confused little old lady.
Why did she really want the tea so much?
Well, because, why did she want the tea? Well,
Why did she want to forget everything so much that she liked the tea so much?
to calm her down so that she's not upset. It was a calming thing. That's in an earlier chapter, that it calmed her down, that she didn't get upset and nervous and worried, not knowing that it actually caused her to forget all kinds of things.
Okay, so that was not something that was in the character per se from
No.
Okay. That's what was, because when the name Bernice would pop up, I wouldn't immediately think Snow White's stepmother.
I may need to make it clear that that's who this is, and she's now known as Bernice somehow.
Yeah, but that was me. That may not be anybody else. That was my comment. Didn't bother my granddaughter one whit. That which is why I thought, she's the target market.
Now remind me, where is she at? Do you have to travel to see her, or is she close by? Oh, okay.
So
She's
right,
where?
I managed to see both sets of grandkids, Austin and San Diego, shortly before the lockdown.
Got
We
it.
were scheduled to go down to San Diego next week, which of course is not going to happen. I still have to cancel my
Yeah.
flights. Then the other thing was when you have the chapter 18, and because it's the last chapter in the book, I wondered whether a better title for the chapter might be Oakleaf Solution, because right at the beginning of the chapter, she's talking about Oakleaf's problem, but you don't find out Oakleaf's solution till the end of the book.
And we still don't know what his solution is.
Well, I thought it was that the impression I got was that he kept her doped up on the tea and only showed her magic mirrors, so she thought she was young and beautiful.
No, he's giving her a choice. She can be young and beautiful with no magic, or she can keep her magic. And she has to decide, because magic in her hands is dangerous. And it's left open. It's open-ended what she decides.
Oh, okay.
We have no idea what she decides. I don't know what she decides. Depends on if I can come up with an idea for book 4.
Okay, because I thought he was just kind of keeping her like Bernice.
No.
Doped up, happy, and that she thought, if she looked in the mirror, she was young and beautiful.
Yeah.
Break all the mirrors in the house type thing.
Okay, yeah.
But that, you know, I think I mentioned in what I emailed you a few typos, but those were my main comments on it.
Okay. All right.
Oh, plus the other one, looking at it here, is like when she remembers that her mother told her that the flower named dandelion was important. I wonder why she didn't remember it previously, you know.
Because she had drank some of the 5-flavored tea of forgetfulness before she knew what it was.
But didn't they ask her, tell her about the password very early on before she ever got to the fairy tale kingdom?
Right. But, you know, it's one of those things she just didn't connect that that's what,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, well, I have
That's
those.
the only explanation I've got is she just didn't make that connection back then.
Okay, I have those sometimes myself.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, no, great story. As I said, you know, when I was reading your whole version, I really found myself doing the page turning fast.
So this was a fun book to write.
Yeah, you really have the pages turning there fast.
It's like Pat says with world building. When I had William get snatched, and I knew it got taken way far away, and then I thought, oh my goodness, now I've got to figure out how to build a world. I don't know how to build a world. I don't know how to do this. And then I calmed down and remembered you write what you know, and I thought, oh, I know fairy tales. I know fairy tales very well. Let's go to the fairy tale dimension. You know, and it comes down to writing what you know, and it's just like, okay. And add in a few more extra things. I love the Cheshire cat who's missing his middle parts.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to find a way of getting those back to him before the story ended, or people would not be happy with this.
Well, I actually like Blackie the best. He was my favorite.
Yeah, Blackie is fun.
Yes.
Blackie, Pat, comes in this book, first appears as a cat, and then we find out that he really is a dragon who's used his magic to make himself into a cat to stay near Violetta because he doesn't want to go back to his own kind when she lost her magic. But I like Blackie.
Well, you guys, I'm sorry, I'm just parallel tasking here because I've been hammered on a number of other things here, so I didn't mean to be so obviously inattentive.
It's okay. We had your comments.
I'm resisting somebody's direction that it would be good if I could prepare a one-page summary view graph of, you know, a week solid of back and forth on a topic that's got probably 40 emails flying around.
And they want a one-page summary.
Yeah, it's a good idea. So
I'll tell you how to do it, Pat. You just write and say, read the attached emails.
yeah, all right. But he said, this is a huge amount of information. So he's at least acknowledging it. So, and I'm acknowledging he's got a great idea to do a one-page summary. So I said, you know, that's a great idea, but I won't have it. That's fine. And I think that the people who've been looped in on this email trail from the beginning haven't had a chance to digest it all because, you know, we all get a lot of emails and so forth. And I'm particularly pushing this initiative. So I'll finish it up after we get off, but at least I've got it started here. Trying to be gracious. Everybody's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. We find ourselves surprisingly busy while we're at home with none of our activities.
So how did you guys get through the Easter weekend? I don't know how Easter is normally at your house. Normally for us, it's this pretty much we acknowledge the Christian aspect of it, but we're not really big churchgoers. And so, but for us, it's traditionally been a family get together. And of course, this time our daughter's in Sacramento and our son and his wife are in Madison, Wisconsin. So we just checked in a little bit by Zoom and that sort of thing. But how did it go for you guys?
Well, following some of the directions and suggestions from our prophet, President Russell M. Nelson, who has been encouraging us to regard it as a home-centered church. We already had in place the framework that we needed because they was shifting the emphasis, saying, you know, you need to be teaching in your home. You need to teach family at home. And so with that, then we watched some Easter messages on the internet.
Uh-huh.
And I took brown paper lunch bags and made bunny baskets, and we traditionally hide Easter baskets. And I remembered, oh, I'm late, time going to bed, and I'm the Easter bunny this year. And I just grabbed him and shoved him in his first place I could think of. It turned out they were beautifully hidden.
Oh,
My
good.
husband has said, and I just stuffed them with what I had because I didn't have Easter candy. So we just put what I had in it, a granola bar,
Yeah, there you go.
different things, and nobody complained. So we were fine.
Good,
And
good.
then we talked to our kids Sunday evenings at 7 o'clock. We always get we turn our portal on and visit with
Oh, okay.
as
So
many of
you,
our kids.
yeah, so that's a way that that's a family tradition you already have, is to do that regularly.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
So anyway, but
Good for you.
Easter was good. It was quiet. It was at home.
Yeah.
I was reading, in one of our church magazines, and there was this one woman that said that her non-traditional Easter tradition is that she has at times gotten up at sunrise on Easter Sunday and gone down to the cemetery, and there in the cemetery contemplated the death and resurrection of Christ.
Wow, that's a solid, pretty.
I don't know that I would do it at sunrise, but I think that it might be a something to do to
Yeah.
kind of bring that to the place. Of course, none of those are empty tombs.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
So it was interesting.
Not having kids here, we just FaceTime with our kids. We're not religious, but our daughter sent a video of her kids' Easter egg hunt, and we saw our other grandkids all decimating chocolate Easter bunnies in different fashions, with discussion of how much they could consume before someone would get sick. But, just some long FaceTimes and videos and things. So worked out fine.
Well, that's terrific. I'm glad to hear that everybody managed to weather it. It was a sad time here. Our daughter in Sacramento had really wanted to come down and made the rationale for why it would be okay and how we could socially distance and so forth. And I said, well, maybe you should call Gavin Newsom's health officer and see what he thinks of that idea. And it's just not indicated. It's not recommended that you travel from Sacramento to here for a non-essential visit and run the risk of something happens on the road. You don't know what it might be, hopefully nothing, but it could go wrong. And it could go wrong in ways that then will expose you or others to problems and potential exposures. And no matter how good you've been working from home and, doing your thing, I just don't think it's a good idea. I don't think you should do it. I didn't say you can't come, but I think you should think about this. So her and her mother were quite sad, and our son in Madison said, I think you were too harsh on that. So I'm played the heavy about social distancing and not traveling. So you'll see. At any rate, that's how we had that on a part of our.
We had kids that canceled their trip to California from Utah. We talked to them on the phone, and he said, California is just not the good place to head into. I'd be worried to get here and not be able to go home.
Yeah, we have a neighbor down the street, Rose, who's an LDS. I'm not sure what the right word or phrase is now, but he and his family talked about how when I guess the church pulled all the missionaries back, kind of like Peace Corps.
From the foreign countries, yes.
And so how many people was that? It was tens of thousands, right?
There were 6 planes that came in from the Oriental countries, something like 2,000 missionaries. There's planes, they chartered them from Delta because there were not flights that they could put them on, and they chartered the planes, and they brought these 2,000 missionaries home on this charter plane. The missionaries who had been out more than 18 months for the guys and more than a year for the girls received early releases from their mission. The others will be reassigned to missions in the United States once they're through their 2-week quarantine period.
Right, but he indicated it was that a lot of them came into probably Salt Lake, I guess. Is what
Into Salt Lake, yes.
and he said it was kind of a bit of a zoo getting him, that they all came in at once. So that's had to be difficult to get them through
Yeah.
as best they could. And so
Yeah,
concerning time.
it was one of those things that, I mean, what are you going to do? They couldn't get them on a commercial plane, and
Yeah.
like they had to, and I know that, I don't know the news as much, but they chartered planes to bring some of the missionaries home from South America.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Not every country, but the ones where there's problems with the coronavirus, they brought the missionaries home.
got it.
And our missionaries that are here locally are sheltering at home like everybody else. They're following the directions and not going out.
Well,
I couldn't even have them over to my house for dinner.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, we'll get through this. Yeah, I admire Cuomo in New York and Gavin in California. I don't admire the leadership at the top of our nation at all. But that's just me. So moving on, what's the next piece we want to talk about? Eves, or should we save mine for last? Or we want to? I'm happy to do Eves.
Okay.
Or have somebody else start with Eves, for that matter. I guess if we're doing our rotation.
You want me to start with these?
Yeah. And since I'm not having much luck with screen sharing, I'll just, whenever it's time, I'll.
Now wait a minute. What did I do? I've lost.
Yeah, I haven't got comments from anybody, written comments from anybody.
I
John.
lost my screen. I hit the wrong thing.
Oh dear. Let's see. We still see you just fine.
Comments. It would be great to get them, because that's always.
I can see even the little in the little box, but I've lost the main big screen.
Well, Eve, I'll double check here and resend mine, because I thought that I had sent mine. I have them prepared here, but let me just double check.
No, I've not gotten yours or Rose's. I got John's, but that was it.
I sent it today.
Oh, I haven't seen it. If you could send it.
Okay. Yeah. Chapter 15 I reviewed earlier. When I got looking at it, I realized, oh yes, I reviewed that one earlier.
Yeah, I sent it out to others, and I massively revised it, because you were very right. It was not in good shape initially.
Okay, well, I'll take a look at it again if it's been revised.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, massively overhauled.
Okay, well, then you'll get that in the mail. Chapter 17, this one, it seemed to me like that chapter 17 was kind of slow. Trying to think. Or was that Pat's?
Mine doesn't have chapter numbers, so.
Yeah, but anyway, I've got the comments in there. The one thing that was can you see my screen?
No, I can't see your screen.
Let's see if I can share. If I share. Okay, I click on share and it's not.
It may
says upload.
I don't know if only Pat can share.
No, everybody can share.
It says, please upload a copy of your document to OneDrive to share it.
Oh, yours is different than, for example, when I do it, it just shows a bunch of documents that I have open on my desktop, and I can pick from those and just choose one to share.
Okay, well, I will go ahead and just comment. It's on, when it talks about, there's a place that, there's the paragraph that starts on June 6, 1944.
Yeah.
And the very next paragraph says, in the midst of Reeves' offensive to secure freelance work, she received a phone message from Jean Craighead George, who was staying in a suite at the Towers Hotel with her husband, John. And then there's a very abrupt change to talking about Jean's cousin, Paula. And I'm left wondering, what was that message about? We never do find out what that message was about. I've got it marked in the comments that I sent and will resend. And so it seems abrupt. So somehow,
Okay, I'll work on that. I'll go back.
And it may be that information just needs to work in someplace else or something, because
Yeah.
it's just a really abrupt shift in there.
Okay, I'll put it in because it was sort of interesting, because I've got sort of multiple themes running through my head. It's sort of my mother's version of things which I come to believe after rereading the diary several times.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's interesting information, but I'd like to know what the message was, and I think that it might need to get into the class.
Because basically I came away with the impression that, Jean, until she totally dropped my mother cold in some of this, my mother adored her, but then I look at this and she's constantly using her. And then when she doesn't obey, she gets cut off hard. And so I'm trying to stick to the facts, but I've sort of totally reinterpreted what I grew up hearing, because when I look at it, I go, boy, this really looks like an intense form of manipulation and leaning on her.
Right.
And, where she'd pop up out of nowhere when she wanted something from my mother, be grooming her like mad. Right. And to the point where my mother didn't do what she was asked to do, and then just totally cut off.
Right. And then in chapter 18.
Okay.
What was it? Chapter 18. There was the Eisenhower Day.
Yes.
And Eisenhower was not spelled correctly, and I don't know whether that's your mother's spelling.
I think that's me screwing up, but I fixed it.
Okay. Yeah, people are going to do it. But anyway, where was that? Anyway, there was a place where, oh, I know where it is. It's down there after the Alfred Hitchcock movie Rear Window, comment about it. And then there's all of these comments that you've got that of what was going on, kind of a thing, and how they're kind of flirting with the guys across the way and doing the striptease and whatever. And I like all of them, but I think that it would be more effective if you put, before this list of things, if you prefaced it with a comment about the fact that the diary reveals her actions and thoughts. And I don't know whether adding the dates of these comments would show, like, is this consecutive days? Is this over a period of time?
It's kind of over a fairly short period of time, because, so like the way I looked at this was, she got pressured into, living with Paula, and then her whole lifestyle dramatically changed.
Right.
In many ways, and there was all this stuff going on, which was, and so there's all, suddenly, for her.
And it might actually work if you, indicated the fact that there's something about her actions, something about her feelings, and maybe just simply have a date like June the 6th, 1944, and have that quote, and then June the 8th, and have that quote, so that we see that timeline kind of a thing. So
okay.
Then you wouldn't need any transition from one quote to another. You've just introduced the idea that there's going to be this series of quotes. You put the dates in and then the quote. And I think that it would read a little bit better. I'd hate to see it go out. I'd hate to see you take it out, because they're all fun information about how her life has changed, But
okay, I'll put something in. I've been trying to make the dates a little more general, because people were complaining that they were too specific, and so I've been trying to work to kind of have things be a bit more generalized. And one of the other things I've done to some extent is group similar things in places.
Right.
So that
but this one where there's a progression in this particular instance, it might be useful to have those dates there, so that we can see that, okay, Monday this happened, and on Wednesday she's doing this again, and
Yeah, it was sort of like, it almost reminded me of, some people in dorm rooms type thing. It's that sort of mentality.
But yes. So,
Okay, yeah, I'll put something in because it sort of bloomed very fast there at the beginning, and I'll put that in, and also smooth that other transition.
right. Now, was there a reason why you'd highlighted those last 3 paragraphs, or was that just an accident?
That was because it was running over the 2,500 word limit,
Oh, okay.
and I was just marking it.
Okay. Okay, and that kind of covers what I had to say.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, and I will get with 15 sometime this week. I've got what, 7 or 8 more masks to make. I've been sewing masks and mailing them to my kids, and I've got 1 more family to sew masks for.
Good.
That's what's been filling my days. Okay, all right. So Pat.
All righty. So bear with me for a second. Again, the urgent COVID-19 response issues continue to erupt on things we're trying to do. So I'll be right back with you in a moment. Bear with me for a second. I know this is rude, but
I am going to see if I can reconnect and get my screen back. So I'm Zoom meetings. Aha! I got my screen back. As long as I didn't lose the audio, I'm fine.
So again, I apologize. This is just, you know how it goes when you think, I can just easily write this little email to respond, and then another one comes in. So
How in the world did you get this little background behind you that looks like you're out?
well, it
outdoors?
depends on what, if your computer's juicy enough and up to speed enough, then you can choose, for example, down in the bottom of the screen when you're, at least on the desktop client, I don't know if how it presents on your machine, but over to the left hand on the bottom, there's the mute microphone looking thing, and then kind of a little video icon that says stop video. And just next to that is a little up arrow that if you click on it says choose virtual background amongst 3 options like video settings and FaceTime HD camera built in.
I see
If
it.
I choose a virtual background, I can actually see some of their canned backgrounds, or I could if my machine was.
And I don't see any of that, but that's okay.
And then I could, for example, choose a different background, either the canned ones or ones that I have on my computer. And if I choose a different background, so I don't know if you can see it now, but this picture of this young woman that's up here on top of it this is zoomed way in on the other background. This is a young woman named Pamela, or Pamela. You say Pamela, I say Pamela, who was part of the Engineers Without Borders El Lanito team. And the larger, more zoomed out background, which if I choose it again, bear with me and I'll go back to that. That
I see her up on the top of the mountain now.
this person up in the corner up above my head there, that's her, this being there. But this is up at Peña Labrada. It's a several hundred feet climb up from the village, the community of El Lanito, Nicaragua, where we're doing this Engineers Without Borders rotary water supply project. So if your computer is capable enough, you can use that feature. But it sounds like maybe, I'm not quite sure what view you're in, or I'm not sure, Eve, if you have those options.
I moved my cursor and now this thing is showing, that little bar is showing up.
Yeah, so
Whatever.
down at the bottom, there's a bunch of stuff. And if you're next to the video camera where it says stop video, the little up arrow that's beside it, not the one between it and the microphone, but the other one, gives you a chance to pick 3 things on my view. Shows choosing virtual backgrounds in the middle, and then video settings is another one, and then FaceTime, whether it's HD camera built in or whatever. And so what my wife's system says is you don't have enough computer power or operating system to do this. So she can't
when she hits it, she gets the error message, or does it show it immediately?
I think it just says you can't do this or something like that.
Oh, because it shows there, but I've just never bothered using it. When my friend in Kuwait uses it, she has so much flickering when she moves around, it's distracting.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes I think
my Japanese screen keeps the glare from the celestial windows from hitting my computer screen.
Ah, there you go.
Since I don't want to mess my screen up again, I'm not going to play with it. You're
all right. That's fair enough.
You're stuck with the background of me in my storytelling room.
So I should go ahead and give my comments on Eve's piece then, right?
Yes, you should. Yes.
So I continue to enjoy this. And Eve, I resent these to you. You can check your email and see if they come in. But I continue to like this. I marked a passage I quite liked in places with suggestions about splitting long sentences, changing sequencing, providing more context, cause and effect, transitions, and alternative phrasing. I said it feels a bit fragmented with some of the paragraphs not linked to the rest of the narrative. I do like the sense of the period, atom bomb, end of the war, celebrations, and quote, kissed by millions of soldiers, sailors, and just plain strangers. And then I marked a ton of stuff, places I quite liked. I just think this is a marvelous thing that you get to do to take this raw material and turn it into a wonderful family story about your mom. And she's, and I get a kick out of her, this phase, which she's 20 odd years old and her libido is really up, the wick is turned up pretty high here.
Yeah.
She still refers to it as smooching and necking and stuff. So I didn't make a comment about that, but since it's her own words, I don't know how much you might be able to revisit that, but there was a little bit of a sense for me of there was a little excessive, the smooching and so forth. I think I have to go get my power supply. I'll be right back because I noticed my battery's fading here. So I'll be right back, you guys.
Technology. Fades off into the distance. No, it's interesting to me, and particularly as I said, because Jean Craighead George ended up being a very famous Caldecott Medal winning writer, and my mother followed her career, but I think it's a little later on where the break comes. And I reread the section in the diaries very carefully, and looking at it, there and coldly, you're going like, how manipulative is this, in terms of what was going on? Because in the next segment, there's some very nasty behavior that happens.
I don't know.
I get the impression that, and I don't know whether you intended it or not, that Eve is experimenting with being a little bit dangerous. I mean, not Eve, Ruth, being a little bit dangerous, but yet there's this core inside her that won't let her go.
Oh, my mother, yeah, she's back and forth in there, and it's sort of like this wild swing, and there's evolution and stuff in there. So to me, it's interesting reading through this, and at the same time, you see the technology coming through. It's like the point at which suddenly they're written in pen, because it's no longer, that you had, years and years and years of pencil, but, when different new appliances come in and things like that, and just what people put up with when they finally get a car, that reliability in cars was just not assumed.
Well, it's very interesting in terms of the period piece quality to it, and I think that where there's opportunity to weave that into the surround, that it's worth thinking about. I'm reminded of it's been several years ago. It's actually oh, it's probably been over a decade, but I remember reading Michael Chabon's Kavanaugh and Clay, which is a fabulous novel about set in kind of the, I think set in the 30s or early 40s, about cartoonists and comic book people, but he draws on like all these WPA era documents and materials that were written about, you know, New York and the time and so forth. And so it's got a very rich feel about it. And these places and settings where your mom was and this time are pretty interesting and rich places. And so they are places where if you choose to slow down and flesh some of those out where it's appropriate, not every, you know, you don't need to be belaboring every room or every situation or every whatever, but you got a lot of rich stuff to draw on. And then I continue to like your kind of putting it in perspective about, you know, how $20 then would be worth, you know, a whole boatload more now. I don't know if you need to do it every time you invoke a thing, but you can always clean that up later if you choose to make some representative things. But it's helpful to remind us that these numbers where she writes about in her diary were significant pieces of change back in the day. I mean, they were not insubstantial sums about how much she earned or how much it cost for rent, whatever it was. You know, there are significant chunks of change, even though they sound like a fraction now of, you know, they sound like nothing. But so I admire you for doing this. I think it's a challenging and rich set of historical materials to pay homage, really, to and respect to a dear family member who, when, you know, her legacy will in large part live on in a different way, in addition to all of her body of public children's books and so forth, and what you write about her and your other family members. This is a wonderful, wonderful thing you're writing about. I just admire it a lot.
Well, it's a very interesting exercise, as I said, you know, kind of sorting through what I remember her saying and sorting through what I'm reading and then looking at it and then saying, well, this is what I'm reading, but I think I have a whole different take on it now. And
right.
that really hit me with the business with Jean Craighead and Paula. And then when I started going back and looking at it in terms of that Jean had a much tougher edge to her on everything, you know, where, you know, there's the bit in Washington where she was laughing at her when she was surprised at Yanoff kind of coming on. It's like, well, what do you expect?
Yeah.
The other thing when I was thinking about it also was that the sexual aggression was so much worse in Washington than it was in New York.
Ah, interesting.
And it occurred to me that that was probably because there were a lot more job opportunities for young female artists in New York, whereas in Washington, the market was so limited.
Mm.
These guys were just abusing everything.
Wow. Wow. Because
there she is, she moves to New York, you know, and it's not happening, whereas it was so intense in Washington.
Very interesting stuff.
So there's, you know, so it's sort of like, the more I read through it, I keep kind of seeing different aspects that I don't think ever occurred to her.
Yeah. Well, and particularly now when we are in this Me Too movement and you are much more sensitized, maybe even than we were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, some of these issues just like punch in the gut. I mean, so.
I think it really is that looking at it. You know, when you look at it and you say, you know, what people at various times have had to put up with.
Well, we move on to my piece. Are we?
Sure.
All righty.
Let me pull you.
You get to go first.
And Rose, if I'm just trying to check here, if you sent comments, I don't think I saw them.
I sent them this afternoon. It was
That may well be, Rose. I'll just check then because
As I said, I have been making masks. And today I sat down and said, oh, I've got to do these critique pieces. People are counting on me. So I sat down this afternoon and did them.
Pat, did you get my comments?
I did. Thank you very much. Very helpful.
Did you find the comments I sent?
I know I'm seeing the stuff here about the Zoom meeting details, but let me just double check, Rose. I might have overlooked it. You know, for some reason, I'm not seeing him here, Rose, as near as I can tell. The last.
I'll go look at my sent items.
It's not. I mean, you can send them to me when you get a chance, or resend them. Like, you know, my showed I'd sent Eve's hers, but if they didn't arrive, you know, that happens with some regularity. It goes into the wrong folder, or it goes to spam.
Huh. No, I'm not seeing it at all. Well, that is interesting, but neither one of those went out.
Happens in the best of families, Rose. Not a worry.
Well, I see yours now. I didn't see them before, so I see yours now at the top of my comments.
Okay.
I just sent them just now. So.
All right. Thanks, Rose.
Well, I sent Eve's just now. I'm getting ready to send. And
do you want me to start then, Pat?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead? I have seen yours, and I thought you had a lot of good suggestions and observations there, so I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. There goes. I just sent them, Pat.
Okay. Thanks so much. I'll throw them in there.
What really surprised me was that when you know your villain shows up, you know, the whole story suddenly just takes off, has very good coherence, and, you know, suddenly you get very engaged. That, you know, the information presented is sort of fit for purpose, and there's this really villainous guy going around. But until he comes on the scene, it's sort of like, you know, you're going, do I need these bits and pieces? You know, and then there are questions of like, what's missing here? And it's almost schizophrenic that it just suddenly falls in place when your villain shows up. And, and the dialogue flows beautifully. And until then, you know, you're going like, okay, why is this here? What's the importance of all this information? Is it information we're going to come back to? Is there meaning? Because I guess it's some of the same problem I struggle with, is how much of the background ambiance is needed, and how much of it noise?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question for me. As I say, you know, I think I've said many times, I've written this in a series of vignettes and short pieces. And so pulling it together and then going through it and just asking those kind of hard questions and what can be cut and so forth, and how much background is useful to convey, how much telling is warranted versus just jumping into the middle of the action and so forth is a really good question. And I just frankly don't know. So this may be in the category of stuff I had to write before I knew I could throw it out. We'll see.
Yeah, because as I said, the first part didn't work for me. And then Cotter shows up on the scene and it's like, we're off to the races following this guy going around being like, you know, almost a comic book villain. He's so villainous.
Yeah, I'm going to have to be careful about how to balance him so he's a little not just extreme pegged on that side, because that's most of what I know about him. And this is a true character, by the way. This is not a...
Oh, I assumed he was a true super bad guy.
This is why this is called a true novel. But there's stuff in here that's not true, that's made up and so forth. But the actions, most of the actions are consistent with stories told about him. But there are other people who said he was a really nice guy. He was just, one reason he behaved this way, he was just old. I had to tell you that. What do you mean he's just old? How does that give him an excuse to do this? Another guy said he was really hard working.
Seem old in this.
If I get older, I can be nasty to people.
Yeah, I don't know, Rose. Maybe there's an out for us. But at any rate, I think you make an excellent point, and I confess I don't know the answer to it until I think I stand back and look at it. And I've been trying to stand back and look at this for a long time. I drafted this thing in 2010, so here we are this long later, and this time I'd kind of like to put all the pieces together and see what's in and what's out, as opposed to Rose, who gets them done and publishes them. Or you.
No, that first book was a lot of years working on it.
Yeah. Well,
The first book was a lot of years, and then the second one came, and the third one came kind of fast. But it took a long time, because I was back in, I think, 2010 working on the first book.
were there any other things, Eve, that you, besides those, I think, really good general observations?
That's the upper level, because as I said, there were a number of places where I marked that it was, a lot of telling rather than showing, and bits and pieces. I just, didn't know if it was needed, where there's a great deal of description on the road running through. And I'm wondering, is this road in particular and where it goes going to then come out to be a major part of the story?
Yeah, it's a good question, and so the proof will be in the pudding in terms of how it comes together. I once thought about that the crossroads there where they go down to the river is actually, for me, almost a character in this story. And so that road through there and that spot is pretty important, but it's not coming through in the way that it's written so far to you in reading these sections in any case. But so I have a lot of work to do on that front.
And part of it may be moving the information around to where it comes up and comes together. Because one of the things, as I said, I started doing with my mother's stuff is looking at it and, trying to group things a bit more. So occasionally I'll move some things out of strict chronological order to put one set of events closer together so you can follow what's happening instead of interleaving them.
Right. I'm going to check over here because it looks like I'm looking at two computers at once here, and it looks like perhaps Rose's comments have come in here. So I'll just double check here to see if this machine shows them those. No, not quite. Let's see. This one. Let's do a quick refresh. But I really appreciate these observations. They're very helpful. And John had some good comments as well about it. There's your comments, Rose. So I'll stick those in there. And then if you want, I can get them opened up here while you're talking to them. Bear with me for a second. I'll just get them. Well, I have different.
Well, I found like Eve did, that first part really didn't work for me. It's very slow moving, and you tend to say, "Is this really important?" The very specific descriptions of the truck, and my mind says, is it important what color that truck is? Kind of a thing. If you've got a string of adjectives describing it, you look at it and say, which one or two do I need instead of all of them, kind of a thing. And there were places that I marked where there'd be the same word repeated within a short space, and it made it for awkward reading. And I marked those spots that, that maybe find a way to
be helpful.
And there's a paragraph, it's down it's on page 4, where they turned and drove back through the ranch, and then they drove down the cleared up strip. This whole paragraph, almost every sentence starts with they. And so, if the if the information in that paragraph is important, you need to see if you can reword it so that you don't get so many theys, because it gets very repetitive when you've got so many sentences that start with the same word. Now then. Oh, there we go. And then also, when you refer to Pat as Pat Coyle, once you establish it as Pat Coyle, I don't think you need to say both the last name, because it gets again kind of repetitive. So I marked that. I won't go into all of those, but then once you get Cotter in, Cotter, you know, then this things right when he first comes in, Chester Cotter stepped out of his trailer, and then and the next sentence, he was from Texas, not handsome. It's good information, but I'm not sure it belongs in the same sentence.
Yeah.
You know, what does not handsome have to do with being from Texas? Kind of a thing.
I like that one too.
Well, clearly that little turn of phrase didn't work if 2 out of 2 said no.
Yeah. And I marked that.
Are all Texans supposed to be tall and handsome or something?
Yeah, I'm not defending the comment.
I lived in Texas too long for that to mean much.
Yeah, but you know, once we get this part with Cotter, then you know, we get some tension in it, we get some action picked up in it, kind of a thing. And this issue of the having to pay back the money for the plane, some dialogue and some conversation in there would help that somewhat, you know. And yeah, I don't know if you ever really said why you were going back to the United States.
I don't think it said here, yeah.
And you know, and I wondered about that, you know, why you were going back to the States. And
that's a good point, because there's a pretty compelling little micro story right there, yeah.
Right. And then the comment about your dad leaving the ranch, and I can't even find it, kind of a thing. It felt like there was more to that story. Oh, okay. It's after you flew to Mexico and back to Phoenix, and Jay refused to take a lie detector test, resigned, and left the release under duress. My thought, and I didn't mark it, but why did they want him to take a lie detector test? What was he accused of? You know, I felt like there was more to that story.
Yeah.
I asked about that one too. I think I put in a comment on that also.
Oh, good. So he's got it marked, because I missed marking it, but it crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Say what in the world's this lie detector test about, and what was he accused of? Did he ever go back to Belize? I don't know if this is the spot to put it in or not.
Got it.
I didn't know why he was allowed to leave when he refused to take the lie detector test.
I think some of that, like, there might be a time kind of in the epilogue to this, once this story is told, there is a little bit of an after story, which is that I remember Kathy and I had been out of Belize for about 2 years or so, and I was writing an MBA paper and I was dealing with this story about how this property had been repurposed into the cocaine smuggling business, and I remember it because my dad had actually been invited to come back and try and help sell the property. And when he was there visiting is when he saw the repurposing of the airstrip and having armed armed guards at the gas tanks with AK-47s charging 5K a pop to refuel cocaine planes, and talking a little bit about the status of the cashews on the little Beasley place that I mentioned here, where Cotter had the guy go down and tear the well out. So there's a place maybe to weave some of that in, but Jay did go back that one time to try and help them with selling the property. But I don't think it goes in this portion of the story. I think if any place it goes is kind of at the end, kind of in a, well, and after all that, then something like that. But at any rate, those are excellent excellent points. And the key thing is what works for you guys and what doesn't. And so this is really helpful.
Well, I think, you know, if Cotter turns out to be the main character in the book, you know, one issue is you never want a character that's all one-sided, might be, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to find the other side of this guy.
But was there anything to this guy that was not vicious?
You know, it's a real stretch. I'm sure there are some things, and people do anecdotally tell me he was a hard worker. He got up early. He got a lot of stuff done. One guy worked for him.
Throwing stuff fast.
So it's a stretch to find the good stuff about this guy.
Well, when you're talking about the changes it made, you know, could include that information about being a hard worker.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well, Rose.
Oh, I'm sorry. Back when you're talking about the changes that he's making on the property, you could possibly work in some of this comments about that he was a hard worker, that he got up early, that he was very much involved in the project.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a project we approve of, he was very involved in it.
Yeah, and he did other stuff like.
And very thorough.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like he was very thorough about making it. I mean, I've had to infer this, but he was very thorough about making a plan and implementing it.
Yeah, he was very successful in that. And in his the other non-drug related things, the fellow that when I was passing through this last time, and I visited my old friend David Dick, who did most of the land clearing and improvements to this property, the ranch property. He said that Cotter was always very friendly to him, always let him, you know, could borrow his equipment if he needed anything. He could get it, you know, like in a small farm ranch community. It's nice to know you have a neighbor who will let you borrow a tractor, borrow a cat, or do something like that. And that he had done the land clearing for a mutual friend of both of theirs, or associate of both of theirs, way up past, beyond this ranch, beyond Blue Creek, over towards the Guatemalan border, and that Cotter had cleared that land and for the Esteban Bedron. So there are some things like that that I can think about to try and flesh this guy out so he's not so one-dimensional. And I think that would be important to do, because otherwise he's just such a grim character.
Is he going to be the main character of your book?
Well, there's a few main characters. Johann Bergen remains a main character, but Chester is the through line through the whole story to the end, in terms of when he comes on the scene and the damage he does.
It might be interesting looking at books where the villain is the main character, and
yeah,
see, you know, what other people have done. You could probably somehow there Google that and find classic books where the villain is.
Yeah, well, Peter Mathiassen's got a great set of a trilogy of books actually set in the Florida, not in the Keys, but on the other side of the Gulf side, about this monstrous character that is featured in all those books. And so and of course he's a spectacular writer, now deceased, but that's a good place to look and see how he's handled that. It's kind of a daunting task because it's a book that thick, you know, at this point, with 3 novels combined. But those are good points.
You might find some analysis of the book too, and lift that of the other.
Yeah. Well, good suggestions, you guys. What else do we need to do before we bid ourselves adieu?
Well, this.
covered it.
Very helpful, and I hope everyone stays healthy. And
Likewise, you be well and safe and hang in there. We'll get through this.
And find some time to ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
We think that we're going to have all this time, and then all of a sudden we discover that somehow we've managed to fill this time up.
I think that's a good thing. Is I think it's much better to find yourself, quarantined but totally busy than quarantined and bouncing off the walls with boredom.
I know. I see the comments about people that are just, this is just throwing them for a loop because they just can't stand the.
So I think it's great that we're all overloaded and over busy and at home.
Yeah. All righty. Well, you guys have a good evening. Be safe and well. We'll just keep on writing, like you say, and hang in there. All righty.
Okay.
I think it's great that we're all busy, frantically busy, and staying home.
All right.
Okay.
Good night for all.
Good night.
Thanks again for your comments. Bye-bye.
Thanks for setting this up, Pat.
You bet. Bye-bye now.
Bye.